Okay, yeah, guys, welcome to the HRLocker webinar. We're going to kick off. So my name is Christelle Wren. I'm the product manager here at HRLocker. This webinar will be going through onboarding and how you can easily do it through HRLocker and what's the best way to do it. What I'm going to focus on is how to set up an onboarding office in HRLocker and how to automate a lot of tasks. So how you can automate your HR docs, how you can automate your CPD items or any training records that you require people to upload. And then I'm also going to run through, I suppose, all the areas when you're setting up an employee, so their terms of employment, their comps and bends, any settings in regards to their timesheets and their time off. And we'll go through the two different ways that you can onboard people into HRLocker. So either directly or through the HireLocker module if that's what you're using. I'm open to questions at the end of the webinar. So there's a little chat bubble at the bottom of this webinar. So if you think of a question in the middle of the webinar, please feel free. At a later date, we can set up a time to go through it individually. So right now we're going to be looking at how you can set up an onboarding office in HRLocker. And that's done here in the settings section up here. I'm just going to select it here. And it's in the offices. So one of the main reasons why you would set up an onboarding office in HRLocker is that you basically create this little bubble for individuals that when they come into HRLocker, that they'll be giving all their induction documents, and they'll be given, I suppose, they'll be given guidance on any training records that you require them to upload, and also guidance on how to fill in their personal details. So how you do that is, I'm just going to show you. Okay, and if you set up the edit button here off that office, you need to make sure that that it is actually set up as an onboarding office, that you've prevented people from seeing inside this office. And what that basically does is it creates that bubble for the onboarding office, that it exists separately to the actual main offices that you have. And you can also set in here, do you want to allow people to record their own training? And also, do you want to allow at this stage for people to request training? So I would always kind of leave that request training button off the onboarding stage, but they can record their own training here. So once you have that onboarding office set up, this is where I would suggest that any new employees that you have, this is where you're going to be putting them. And you can automate, kind of set up a workflow in regards to the documents and the training that you want people to do prior to when they start working with you. So the first section that we're going to look at here is the HR docs section. So the HR docs really is any document that you require a person to sign. So your handbook or any policies and procedures that you may have, or specifically any contract that you have, an individual that you would like them to sign as well. And when you're setting up these documents, you can publish them directly to the onboarding office and also directly to the employee. So say, for example, this handbook over here, you can see here it's published to all offices, all departments, and all users. So every single person who ever comes into HRLocker, this handbook will be published directly to them, and they will be required to sign the document as well. So if you're actually currently using HRLocker and there's a lot of documents that you'd like for people to sign when they're coming on board, you would go into the Manage section here, and you would put in the name of the document that you'd like to upload, put in the different, that you would select the office and actually publish it directly to the onboarding office. Okay, so say, for example, we're going to put in here your health and safety policy, okay? So you'd put in the description, so you'd say here, this is the company's health and safety policy, and you require some people to sign it before they actually start work. You publish it to the onboarding office, and you would require that it's an essential document. When you select that it is an essential document, that means that the person will be required to actually digitally sign the document. So just make a list of all the induction documents that you require people to sign and publish them all to the onboarding office. Set that they're essential documents, and then any new starter, when you bring them in and you put them onto the onboarding office, all these documents will be there waiting for them to sign. If there is a specific contract or something quite specific, like a job description, contract, or anything like that, that you want to publish directly to the individual, once you onboard them, you can select their name from the, I'm just going to select all offices here, and you see the employee's name comes here, and then you would just select the actual employee's name and publish that document directly straight to the individual, rather than it obviously being accessible to everybody in the office. So you've all those documents set up and they're sitting here waiting for you. And they're now sitting in that onboarding office. The next section that we're going to kind of do the same kind of structure is the CPD section. So the CPD section really is any training records that you require people to have. If there is specific certs, or if you require a copy of somebody's driver's license, or if you require them to have a first aid cert or anything like that, you can set up the training and also assign that to the onboarding office in the same way as the HR doc, so that any new person who comes into HRLocker will be prompted to upload the copy of their certs. So much the same as the HR docs, you're going to go into the Manage CPD section here. And say, for example, if you require everybody to put a copy of their driver's license, you will select Assign, and again, select the onboarding office here. And then anybody who goes into that onboarding office will be required to be prompted to put a copy of their driver's license up there. If it's something that's quite specific and you only really require one employee to do that, or if there's specific people maybe in a department that you require, if somebody's just only, if you require it from people in the sales department, then you can break that down a little bit further. So if it's by department, you can just select that it goes to maybe the credit control department. Or again, once the employee is added, you can just select their name here and actually publish and request it directly from the employee. Okay, so once you have those two things kind of set up, now you've set up your workflow structure that you want people to actually follow once they join your company. So the next bit really is now you're going to put the person into HRLocker. There are two ways to onboard somebody into HRLocker. You can either do it directly here in the directory where you select the Add Employee button, or you can do it, if you're using the HireLocker module, you can do it through the HireLocker module. So I'm just going to show you the HireLocker way really quickly, and then we will concentrate on adding it directly to the directory. So once you go into HireLocker, I'm just going to select the candidate here that we're going to onboard. So if we look at Robert Burke here, and say we brought, he's applied for the job, we've screened them, we've interviewed him, and we've brought him into the offered stage, and he's accepted, then we're now going to hire him. So you're going to go into the workflow here in HireLocker, select Hired, and this little pop-up window is going to pop up here. And this is going to basically ask you, what information do you want to bring across to HRLocker? The minimum information that you need to put in is how many days holidays a year is he going to have, what his actual start date is, and if you want to send the invitation email now. A couple of different reasons why you would want to send the invitation email now, but there are things to remember as well. So if you're going to be sending the invitation email now, that invitation email to HRLocker is going to be going to their Gmail account or their Hotmail account, so it will be going to their personal email. Basically, they'll be able to access HRLocker before they start work. There's a couple of good reasons for that. So basically, remember, we've set up that workflow already, so that the individual can basically start to do, before they start work, they can sign all their HR docs, they can upload any training that you require them to do. So they've done a lot of that induction work prior to them starting work. If you don't want them to do that, then you just don't send the invitation email, and they'll still be onboarded, but they'll just be sitting in the onboarding office and they won't actually have been invited into the system yet. So if you're not using HireLocker, you can add the employee here. Okay, so I'm just going to select Add Employee. And these are the required fields that you will need to put in to create an employee. So we're just going to create an employee here. So we're going for Dylan, Rin. They need to have an email address to use the system. Okay. And this is quite an important bit here. So you need to decide what kind of user the employee is. So are they a regular employee or a manager? So for this purpose, we're going to be setting up the individual as a regular employee. Once we set them up as a regular employee, I'll then show you how what the difference is between a regular employee and a manager is, and what the next steps are for a manager. So the start date here is important. So say, for example, here, we're going to say that this guy is going to start on the 6th of February. And then the annual leave days per year. Very important that when you're setting up the annual leave days, that you put in the full 12-month allocation, because the system is going to work out how many leave days the person has left for the remainder of the year. So say, for example, this guy starting on the 6th of February. So the system is going to calculate how many leave days he is going to be getting over an 11-month period. So for this purpose, we're going to be putting in 20 days for this employee and who he reports to. So basically who his line manager is. The job title, so if you have that job title, put it in there. And nice place, you can put in the job description here if you have it, just so that it's quite clear to the employee what their job description is and that you also have it on file in regards to what you actually employed the person on. The office, so when you're putting in the person, you will be selecting the onboarding office here first, because we're going to go into that workflow that we've set up for that onboarding office. You can put in the department. And then the employee ID. The employee ID is not a required field. So if you are using employee IDs, or it could be your payroll information, or even IDs in regards to your PRSI numbers or anything like that, you can put that in there, but it's not a required field. So timesheets, so are you going to be enabling timesheets for this person? So for this example, we are going to be. And then the send invite now. So much like the other way with the HireLocker invitation there is, do you want to invite this person in right now into the system, or do you want to wait until you set up all their information first and then invite them in? Totally up to yourselves. Okay, so we're going to submit and we're going to create the employee. Okay, and then you see once now that I've created the employee, I have all these different tabs here that I would strongly suggest at this stage that you actually complete each of these steps to make sure that the employee is set up correctly in the system. You know, from a reporting perspective, if you haven't filled out all the information correctly, it's going to throw off your reporting. And also, if you're at this stage, you have all the information to hand, so you might as well just get stuck in and set up the person properly. So this is the summary screen that we've just set up. The personal tab here, so this is specifically for the employee, and the very first time an employee logs in, they'll be brought to this page. So I would suggest that you leave some of this information for the employee to set up, just to make sure that you have it up to date and you have all that relevant information from the employee. So say, for example, their personal phone number or their personal email, their home address, a picture that they can upload, their tax number, their bank account details. Also, if they're required to have a working visa, you can track that here as well. So if you put in the visa expiry date and when you want to be reminded by when that's going to be running out. I would also strongly suggest that you advise the employees that they do need to put in their emergency contacts here so that you have a record of who to contact in an emergency. So this is the only tab that an individual can edit themselves, and you'll get notified once an individual edits this tab. So the next section, which I think is quite important here, is the terms of employment. And really, this is where you're going to be tracking all that contractual information that you have in regards to the employee. So the first section here is the employment type. So for this purpose, we're going to be putting them on a full-time contract. And you'll see once I select contract, the box opens up to tell me what is the contract expiry date. So once I put in that contract expiry date, I'll get a notification when this person's contract will be expiring. The contracted hours, so presumably that's going to be in the person's contract. So if it's 20 hours a week, make sure you're putting in what the actual hours there is there. The employee types, you have a couple of different options here. So direct, I would always say that's a direct employee. Indirect would be usually an agency worker that you may be having, or apprentice, which is quite self-explanatory there as well. The full-time equivalent, so this could be if somebody's contracted for 20 hours, so really they're only a full-time equivalent of half a person, so you would put in that 0.5 there. And this is a way later on, if you're filling in that information correctly, you can download a report that will show you specifically how many full-time equivalents that you have in the company. So probation period, so if you're usually putting in a 6 months period, so you'll be putting in what date the probation is going to happen, when you want to be reminded by it. So it's a couple of different options there that you can choose. You can put in 1 month there. And who you want to be CC'd on that email. So the manager and employee will automatically get that email in regards to when the probation is. But there could be some reason maybe that you would like to have somebody copied in on that email. So that could be payroll, or it could be somebody from the HR department. So you would put in however many email addresses that you require there. The notice period, this is probably in their contract as well. And it may change after a year or so. But if you just record that section in there now as well. The end date, Quite important, as this will affect somebody's actual access to the system and will also affect their holidays. So if somebody's on a 3-month contract and you put in their end date here, it is going to prorata their holidays for only 3 months, and it will take that end date into account. Once that end date arrives, the person will go into the terminated section in HRLocker and will no longer be able to access HRLocker. So again, much like the probation period, is when do you want to actually be reminded of somebody coming up to an end date, and who do you want to be CC'd in that email? This is a very handy field for if, for example, you might need to have IT registered in that end of date email, or somebody from HR or somebody from payroll, just so that you can get that offboarding process started, that people are notified that this person will be leaving the company. In each of these tabs here, guys, there's a section for uploading documents. And just to be aware, when you're uploading documents into this section here, these documents are only visible to the manager and the admin, and they're not visible to the employee. So if these are documents that you want to share with your employee, make sure that you're not putting them here and that you're putting them in the HR docs section up here. Just make sure that you have all this filled out correctly so that your reports are correct, that you can report on the amount of contracts and things like that. The next section is the comps and bends section. So, from an individual perspective, this is probably what I'm going to be most concerned about, because I want to be looking at what my salary is and what bonuses I have. So when you add the person's salary here, you've got a couple of different currencies that you can choose from, and the rate. So if, for example, I'm putting in that this person is on 30,000, it's really important that you don't leave that 30,000 there per hour. And that you select that it's per year, or else this person's got quite a bump in their salary. The pay frequency, so this is just for the employee to know when they're going to be paid and when it's affected by. So his start date was the 6th of February, so that's what we're going to be putting in there. And if we submit there, you see his salary is going to be there. So after 6 months, if you decide that he's going to get an additional salary, a salary increase, you're going to go to that add edit button, and you can add a salary increase there. In the bonus section, so this might be something that you might want to fill out immediately, but if the person is going to be entering into a bonus scheme after 6 months, you can add the bonus here and put an effective date. So say, for example, we're going to say he's going to enter in a €3,000 bonus that starts from 7th of June, 2020, okay. And the note here that we're going to say is that that this will become effective after probation is signed off, and that's added there then. So the benefits, so this is a really nice way to be able to track not only just your pensions or things like that, but you can also kind of track what items that you've given to people. So say, for example, if you're giving people laptops or phones, even fobs or anything like that, here you can assign them to people, give them a value, and then also what kind of items that you actually have and to people. So if this person was to leave, you would know that they have a laptop and a phone to return. Or if you're upgrading phones or laptops, you'd be able to basically run a quick report to know how many iPhone 6s there are in comparison to the iPhone 7, things like that. So the next section here is the reviews and references tab. And in this section, you can set up kind of what review frequency they'll be falling into. So will it be going into annual, half yearly, quarterly? So for this example, we'll be going into half yearly, and we'll be putting out maybe the 7th of July again. And do we want to actually send an email reminder? We do have a performance management module called real-time reviews up here. This section, I won't be going into that, and I'll really just be concentrating on just setting up the employee's workflow here. In here as well, you can also add references. So obviously, you've just employed this person, so presumably you've just done 2 references for them, and here you can add those references just so that you have them on file for a future date. So once you've gone through that, the settings section is also is really important that you have this set up properly. Here we'll be going into their time off and their time on settings for the individual. So by default, the person's annual leave approver, so their time off approver, will be their line manager, which we set up in the summary tab here. But for some reason, this might be different. So you can change that here. So we've enabled timesheets for this person. So again, you can change who the timesheet approver is, and by default, it will be the line manager. So when you're setting up an employee's timesheets, you have a few options to decide on. We here at HRLocker, we have 3 specific timesheets that you can use. So if you want to use the clock in and out, you can either use the GPS location tracker, which we've just launched an app into the app stores that if somebody clocks in and out on their phone, that it will basically record the GPS location that the person has. And we'll be sending on some information in regards to the apps and how that works as well later on. There's also the IP address. So basically this would be if somebody's clocking in on their laptop and you want to make sure that they're in the Wi-Fi, so basically that they're in the office and they're not in the actual car park clocking in, you would put the IP address in there. And if you have any questions in regard to find your IP address and things like that, you can contact me afterwards. If you don't want to be using clock in and out for the timesheets, take that box off and you can just use the honesty-based timesheet. So you put in their default start times and finish times here, and then on the individual timesheets, they can just edit them every day or once a week and submit them for approval. The next section here would be the training records, the CPD validator here. So if you do have a specific training manager, this is where you would put them, that they would actually be validating all the training there. So the real-time review, so as I said, the performance management section, so this is where you would be enabling them for the individual as well. And the working days. So working days would be quite relevant in regards to the actual holidays. So say, for example, if this person only works 4 days a week and doesn't work a Friday, and I click that off, this person, when they select an actual week's holidays, it's only going to deduct Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from their leave. So it's not going to deduct that Friday. So this is quite important that you have to set up correctly. There's also the time off and lieu section here, which I'm not going to spend too much time on, but basically if you're setting up time off and lieu for individuals, they'll put in their standard working hours, which is, for this example we have here, is 40 hours. And once the person submits a timesheet, the minute they go over that 40 hours, it will start to clock time for them in another little chart on their time off section, and the person will be able to request time from that section. There is also the HireLocker link here, which is if this person is going to be a hiring manager or needs access to HireLocker, you can select that little link here too. So once you have all this set up for the employee, they're now set up and invited into the system, and that's basically all the information. Now, the main difference here then is if you want to actually change this person into a manager, you get this whole new permission section here. So I'm just going to show you here, if I go to the summary, I'm going to change this regular employee into a manager. I'm just going to press submit here. And now you'll see I'm going to go to the permissions tab here, and I've got all these different settings here. So what do I do with these settings? The main thing is, from a manager perspective, you need to decide how much or how little this manager needs to be able to see. So say, for example, if this manager needs to be able to see time on for their subordinates or for the selected offices, you decide that. Okay, you select then for time off. But the main kind of real areas that you want to look at is, does this manager need access to reports? Will this manager need access to HR docs or the directory? And see, if you select the directory here, there's going to be a little tick button here that says, do you want this manager to access comps and bends? So that's really important. So this might differ for every single manager that you have, or it might be the same. So just make sure that that's correct for everybody. So once you have that, once you've invited the employee, they will get their email saying that they've been invited into HRLocker with their username and password. And when they come in, they will come here to this section here where their tasks basically are ready there waiting for them, and they'll be instructed what to do. So guys, just to kind of go through that, so what we've gone through is how to set up an onboarding office, how to select, kind of put in their job titles and all their terms of employment. And then after that, what's actually quite important is once the person has been onboarded and they've gone through all their induction, that you go back into the directory and put them into the correct office. I'm just going to select this guy here, and you'll see here that I can select. So if he was in the onboarding office, I can now put him into the correct office here after he's gone through that induction program. Throw it open there for any questions. I'm just going to have a quick look and see if there are any questions here. Can you apply different value amount benefits, for example, pension contributions or value of private health insurance? So when you go into the comps and bends section here, and you're adding in the pension. So you'll be adding an amount rather than an actual percentage. So it's the value. So you can't put a percentage in there. Do you have to use the onboarding office, or can you just go directly to the main office? Yeah, absolutely. So you do not need to use an onboarding office. You can just put them directly into the office that you're using. But just make sure then when you're actually sending out those induction documents or training records, that the publishing the documents, that make sure that they're actually relevant to that person when they're coming on board, rather than publishing induction documents to an entire office, and they've already gone through that process. Does anybody else have any questions? So we will be I'll send you a copy of this on anyway. Our next webinar that I would hope you'd be going through would be around RTR, which is our performance management section. And we are going to start doing these webinars once a month. So if there's any areas that you guys would like covered, please feel free to email me directly, and we'll see can we cover. And if there's also any areas that I haven't covered or you have more questions about, please feel free to either pick up the phone or drop me an email, and I'll be happy to go through everything with you. And like I said, we've also released a new app into the App Store in regards to the clock in and out. And I'll be sending on more information so usually when I send out that kind of information, it goes into the dashboard here. So there's a little pink button that usually comes up, and you could be able to see the information there. So thank you very much, everybody. And please feel free to contact me if you have any other questions.